happy afternoon. Everybody feeling nice and fresh. We've had a nice lunch. Everybody's rested up, and we're here for a good 25 seconds of hearing me blabber on. And, well, if you haven't seen it already, my name's Danny. I am a systems engineer manager. I look after a bunch of really smart people, which is fun because they keep me smart. So, and that's always a fun thing. And I guess this is the first time in Australia that Dell and EMC have actually spoken at one of these events, and it's a bit of a shame because there's a lot of work that both companies were doing prior to the merger coming together. And for those that are asking, the merger's gone well, and it's been, there's been a lot of questions, and I kind of I like to assemble it and make reference to it to one of my favorite movies. And how many people can tell me what this is from? Back to the Future fans, right? Of course. Everybody is a Back to the Future fan of some sort. And like Doc Brown, right, who shot forward into 2015, there were some predictions that came out in particular in Back to the Future Part 2. And I kind of look at the market and said, okay, well, the market was saying a lot of things about this whole DellEMC thing that was going to either play out or not. And some things that we've been working on have played out quite well. Actually, as part of the joint coming together, about a month later, we announced 21 different product announcements and integrations that came out. So it's one of the most well-planned mergers I've ever been through, and it's the largest that I'll ever be through, I think, in my life, because it's a $67 billion acquisition. Now, but some of the things that they got right and some of the things that they're still working on are kind of like this picture, right? The hoverboard. Everybody knows that the hoverboard is, kind of there, but not, right? We're almost on the path of having a real hoverboard. But the other thing that they got right, but, they're a year behind, and I don't know if it's the laptop that's flickering like that or if it's just my thing, but please just be with me. Yep. Okay. That's okay. As long as you can cope with my voice, we'll be all right.
You can supplement this one.
Yeah. This one's really excited, so if you got, some form of, visual impairment, then just blink your eyes. It's the same sort of visual effect. Right? Okay, so the Cubs, 108 years until they won the World Series, right? And they won it just the other day. So I feel that there's some things that Dell and EMC coming together may not get right the first time, but eventually the prediction will come true. And some of those are, and that's what my mission is today, is to really come and share with you a lot of the things we've been doing in the open source community, as well as Openstack initiatives, as well as some of the things that we're doing to enable success. And I thought I'd talk to you about a few of these today. Some of the things that we're doing, we're a big supplier of one of the big use cases for OpenStack adoption right now, which is mainly NFV. We're seeing a huge amount of uptake around network function virtualization, working with a lot of telcos globally and locally on those deployments. Aptera is a good partner of ours that we're working with on that. A lot of our open source contributions, you probably wouldn't think of EMC or Dell as an open source contributor, but just go to EMC code or Dell EMC code, sorry, I'll slip up once in a while, Dell EMC code on GitHub, and you'll see a whole raft of either automation plugins to all of our technology stacks, as well as some of our open source projects that we're owning. We are founding board and contributor, and I guess one of the major contributors to Cloud Foundry, which is an open source project for platform as a service. For those that are looking to deploy containers, it's a structured, opinionated approach to deploying containers on top of an IaaS stack, right? And then the other things is we've actually contributed a lot to OpenStack, not as much as some of our peers in the industry, but we have contributed some of the core things that have made enterprise data centers function, things like consistency groups and storage and things like that. So those are all part of OpenStack. But at the same time, what we've now done is said, okay, well, there's these reference architecture approaches, but what about if you just wanted to have this thing turn up and it's OpenStack ready and maintained and sustained for you? And so what we're trying to do is build, extend, and optimize customers' environments around OpenStack and what they're looking to deploy. Now, to best do that, you've got choices, right? And in those choices, you literally can say, okay, well, do I want to go and build some of these things myself? And we see a lot of people in the Australia market that has gone and down this path of building their own Openstack ecosystem. And that comes with its rewards and so forth. Or you can buy. And those that want to buy can, have their own advantages, which is really seen around business values, or the way we see it coming from. It's more focused on time to market, time to value. So I thought I'd kind of give you the best of both worlds. When you look at build, we see it as a reference architecture approach. Although the building blocks and blueprints are all there, the documentation's all there for you. There's some benefits to that, and the benefits is that the configuration, and if you want to make changes to that ecosystem, you can do that. You have the utmost of flexibility within the actual deployment of that reference architecture. There's some downsides as well, but those are sometimes the price you pay for flexibility. Whereas when you start looking at buying, an appliance-based approach around Openstack has some great value, things around time to market, being able to do things very quickly. The challenge with this, though, is that you don't have the ability to say, for example, I want to traverse the network and inspect all the packets that are happening inside this appliance from a security point of view. No, you're not allowed, right? This is locked down. We don't want you to focus on that, right? And so what I thought I'd do is take you on a bit of a journey just to start from where we contribute and what we do, so that if you're a Dell or an EMC customer in the room, or you're looking to become one, then you can understand what we do in the OpenStack space. Okay. So it all starts with componentry. Right? These components are all, if you're in the build category, that means you're still buying a single storage system from someone or single compute. You have those silos inside your organization. And listen, we all want to move beyond that. I get that. But some reality is that we still live in that space, right? Especially in government organizations. The way procurement's set up. It's a transition that most of the market's going through. So if you're looking to do that, we've got a pretty rich history dating back since 2012 of where we started becoming really instrumental in saying, yep, we're going to be part of this OpenStack thing, and we're going to start contributing all, either our code and our APIs, so therefore it's a common standard if you're looking to deploy OpenStack inside your environment. You can leverage DellEMC's storage portfolio in order to gain access to it. One of the key turning points for us was when we acquired a company called Cloud Scaling. Cloud Scaling was a company that was headed up by a person by the name of Randy Bias. Randy Bias was one of the first to build his own distribution for OpenStack. And his OpenStack distribution were adopted by Walmart and AT&T. Those pretty large organizations, and they built their distros on that. So as part of that acquisition, it wasn't just the acquisition of his IP and assets, because to be honest, we didn't really use much of that. We used him as an individual to come in and actually teach us how to do open source, teach us how to be a part of this ecosystem in the way that's going to gain attention from the market space. And so that led to 2 years later us coming out with this product called Neutrino, which I'm going to talk to you about today and explain what that is and the benefits that come from that. Randy's now left. He's obviously collected his money and said, okay, I've spent my 18 months of my contract with you, and now I'm at Juniper. So he's gone and done his thing, but we managed to take advantage of that. And so what's happening is you could see here that we're following all the way up to the latest release of Newton. So anything that has been released as part of Newton, we are contributing to. And we're really looking forward to OpenStack Summit coming here to Sydney, because it's going to be a pretty big event, puts Australia on the map around OpenStack and really gains a mind share. But when you start to look at, that's just building your own componentry. We're not even talking reference architecture right now. Right? We're talking just, okay, I want to start something, but I've got the team, we're going to build this all myself. If you want to start looking at reference architecture, we've got partnerships where we've done validated design. We've done the integration with both Red Hat, Mirantis, and Ubuntu. And we've also done joint services offering around that, so therefore you can order the blueprint and then have a SKU that says deploy X, deploy some form of IaaS stack. Effectively, is what we're trying to do. And then we've got the cooperative support agreements in the back end to help you through that. Now, you may sit there and think, okay, well that's all I need. Well, but that's not necessarily the case for a lot of organizations. But when you start to look at a lot of the momentum that is in the market, a lot of people are going down this Mirantis Red Hat space, so we can't deny that. And what we recognize is a huge ecosystem that comes with one of the number one open source software companies, which is Red Hat in the market. And so we decided to not only build this blueprint of something that can run an OpenStack flavored or Red Hat flavored OpenStack solution, we also decided to say, okay, well, what are all the other things that Red Hat offer to clients? And those are things like Openshift, right? Although we're a big contributor to Cloud Foundry and really back that horse, you can't deny that a lot of organizations are looking at Openshift to build a development platform for their organization. So we do support that in this turnkey, or not turnkey, reference architecture approach as well. So same thing as cloud forms. And then we do joint reference architecture around the networking components as well. Now, that's for those are all the things I want to share with you around the build aspect. If you're looking to buy, and when I say buy, it's really about getting this turnkey solution. Now, let me explain the difference, right? It's important. This is the real important piece. The difference is that it's not only engineered, it's also manufactured. Everything is done straight out of the factory, right? So we take the entire componentry of OpenStack. We take the hypervisor that we choose to use in our buy solution. We look at the management aspect of it, right? So for, I think the lovely lady from Department of Defense who shared her story about OpenStack and some of the things around monitoring and how you manage that ecosystem, right? How you track what's happening in the entire solution. You think about that as well. You also think about how you're going to support it and sustain it. And when I talk about support and sustain, I talk about how you're going to keep up to date with all the releases that are coming every 6 months from the OpenStack community. How are your people going to be aware of how to maintain that themselves? And then how do you roll that out into the system in a seamless way that doesn't take downtime, right? And so that is done by that's where we actually built this business of converged infrastructure. And so what we've done is we created something called VXRack Neutrino. Yes, a mouthful. It's a solution that allows us to deploy OpenStack, the open source flavor of OpenStack. We're not taking any secret distribution or anything like that. We're using everything that the community builds and rolling it out and making it very seamless for you customers to actually go and deploy. So a little bit more into this. What makes it really turnkey? The first thing is that we had an intent around why we built this thing, right? It's important to start with why. The main reason that we wanted to do this is we noticed that the development community and the world of creating a digital enterprise is becoming so important. So important because that's the biggest differentiator for your business today, for government agencies. If you don't have some form of communicating with your end user via digital means, then you're not going to be relevant. So we wanted to create a turnkey infrastructure as a service platform that allowed you to just focus on the services that were going to sit on top of it, okay? Rather than worrying about how to build infrastructure as a service. So really it's around meeting the business demand. The second thing is we wanted to make sure everything was pre-tested, pre-configured, and had that enterprise flavor to it. So therefore, if you've got an organization that is hesitant to go and jump into an open source project, and even though you've got the people and everything, that's that cultural change, then we can kind of give that stamp of approval to say, hey, you're supported by an enterprise organization or vendor, one would say, that still doesn't, it's not going to lock you in because ultimately we're using the open source distribution of OpenStack. The lock-in comes from the management interface and the IP we put around it And so I'd be crazy to say that there's no lock-in, or else there's no continuous revenue that comes into any vendor, right? So I wouldn't want to lie to you. And the second thing is that it really is about supporting you moving to building cloud-native applications, right? Although you can run traditional workloads like VMs on it, because we pre-bundle that into the solution as well. Really, we saw a big movement around building this microservices architecture. So if you're looking to do that, then hey, why not have a platform that supports it and makes it really efficient and agile for you? So what do? We built this platform, and we've taken, we've got the ecosystem is built of hardware, which is coming from DellEMC. This is all hyper-converged infrastructure that allows you to scale up to 144 nodes. Start with 4, and it scales as you need to grow. We then focus on services that are going to run on top of them. One of those services is an IaaS stack. The next service is a PaaS stack, and we're looking to deploy not only those services, but also big data services that allow you to gain insight and add an analytics engine to the apps that are being developed. Now, to support that, we have to have a common platform that allows you to manage that ecosystem, and that's the platform software stack that we have in there. So what we do is when we talk about service provisioning, it literally is taking all these individual componentry and saying, okay, well, how do I package that all up together and deploy it? And from there, what we do is we install all the Openstack projects all the way up front. We then configure all the networking storage devices and all the nodes in the platform itself. We automate all of this, by the way. It's just explaining to you what it takes to get this up and running. We then configure the software-defined storage layer so you can actually enable that hyper-converged capability underneath the covers. We then issue out the database, as well as a messaging. We're using RabbitMQ underneath the covers to actually track a lot of use it as a message bus underneath the covers as well. We also then have monitoring software. The monitoring software is used to monitor the entire stack end to end. But what we also do is we plug in connections to, say, for example, if you want to deploy your PaaS on top of that. Now, how are you going to do monitoring from container through to VM through to bare metal, right? All the way through. To do that end-to-end is quite tough. So we've solved that problem in this approach, and we've done that by using open source technologies as well. We're not using too much proprietary stuff in here, and I'll share with you what we're using underneath the covers. And what we do is we package this all up and auto-deploy it using Ansible underneath the covers. We're using the open source version of Ansible, and we're using Bedrock, which is a common API that sits over top of Ansible. So therefore, it's keeping our costs down and the cost down for our customers on actually deploying this, because we're not really charging for software licensing. What we're charging for is the service and support of it, right? And so then we just go and deploy all the files, and then it loads it up into the appropriate kernel modules across all the nodes. And what we're doing to make this really efficient, underneath the covers, we're leveraging SUSE Linux, our partners here, SUSE, who actually have just been acquired by HP, which is quite interesting. But what we're using is we're deploying all these services on using Docker containers. We're deploying them underneath the covers. So everything that we're hosting on a node is actually a container that's running underneath the covers. From there, we have a software-defined storage layer. We choose to use something called Scale.io. That's a technology that comes from DellEMC. It's a very, very high-performing software-defined stack that turns all your compute into shared storage, effectively. And it could scale up to thousands of nodes in a single cluster, right? There's no limitation, actually. We haven't really seen it need to go beyond that. And we're using a KVM hypervisor underneath the covers. So that's probably a big surprise to a few people, given that Dell Technologies is a big owner of VMware, but we believe in choice, right? And from there, you're able to then go and deploy your cloud, this is a basic example of the cloud compute services that you need, right? So I thought I'd list out all the OpenStack projects that we're supporting as part of the release of Neutrino. So we've got compute with Nova. We've got block storage, which is Scale.io, but Scale.io supports Cinder. So we've got we're using the common API there. We do support native Swift on Scale.io if you want to start by just deploying it on a block device, if you're starting with object in a small manner. But as soon as you want to go out and expand your object deployment, like you're talking you're using object for IoT or big data, and you're starting to use it for long-term retention, like several use cases, then what we recommend is you go to a purpose-built object platform that allows you to have geo-distribution of object and supports many sites, and which also talks Swift. And we have something called Elastic Cloud Storage that does that. And so it allows you to start small and branch out. From there, we use obviously all the mainly, what we did is we looked at, okay, what are the most popular projects that are being taken up? Well, we focused on those, and we then started to build that. The next one we're looking at is supporting fault domains, multi-site, and we're also looking at domain name services, so DNS as a service, and that's the other one that's coming from us. But ultimately, we've got some of the main key ones, and Keystone is a big one. And so when we start looking at what I mentioned, the platform services alongside that stay part of Neutrino, we decided to look at leveraging things like Elasticsearch, Kibana, these monitoring and log aggregation tools inside of the platform services to collect everything from a log management point of view. So we collect everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to use Logstash or Kibana or any of those across your enterprise to support it. We'll just feed it out to your Splunk environment or whatever it may be. We have our own monitoring reporting of the entire ecosystem so it can detect things that are happening. We do our own system maintenance, so therefore whenever a node goes down, it's automatically picked up and then it's alerted back to EMC, DellEMC, so we know exactly it's connected through to something we call remote support gateway service. And we automate software installs and upgrades, right? And that's a big thing. So I hope you understand that it's all about the sustain, right? It's easy to buy. Everybody can go and buy and build and do some stuff, but it's all about the sustain. And that's what we've tried to do in this ecosystem. So what that allows us to do is say, okay, now you've built your IaaS, and you can get that in a turnkey solution. Literally, it arrives pre-configured and ready to go. You just have to give your network subnets and everything else, and then we give you a license key, which that license key is just associated with just enabling the platform. And you're ready to go ahead and start deploying VMs. Now, those VMs have to be useful, but you can go and start doing that. And one of the services that we've come out to market with is the ability to deploy a PaaS natively and pre-integrated on top of that. We do that out of the factory as well. It's just an option that you say, hey, I want to have this thing be a developer platform. Right? And if I look at across Australia right now, a lot of people are talking about using containers. But when they look at using containers, what they're forgetting is that the container ecosystem is going to require several things. Things like schedulers, things like a DevOps automation tool. And a lot of people are using things like Puppet or Ansible or Chef to automate the underlying infrastructure to support containers. Things like load balancers, right? Load balancers to come into the platform itself. Things like, how do you manage fault tolerance? How do you manage persistent data? How do you create a marketplace that you can access? So when you add all of those things up, when you're trying to build out a container platform, right, there's a lot of components that come with it. And that's what we've done and pre-built for our customers using things like Cloud Foundry. So if you haven't had a chance to look at Cloud Foundry, I recommend you go to pivotalwebservices.io. It's an instance of Cloud Foundry that's running on top of AWS. Cloud Foundry is if you think of Openstack like a common API that's going to sit across your infrastructure components, Cloud Foundry is like a common development platform that's used by 44% of those that are consuming PaaS in the market space today. So I would say if you haven't thought about it, think about the strategy around supporting multi-cloud. And if you want to have a multi-cloud development platform, then you got to look at things like Cloud Foundry, Heroku, Openshift, so on and so forth. Okay. And the real business value that comes to it is it allows you to go and, not be worried about the infrastructure, get that up and running as quickly as possible, focus on getting the application development up and running. And we call this native hybrid cloud because it's a spin-off of building cloud native apps, and I just thought they'd create another funky word or another funky acronym, NHC. But really what it's doing for the business is really giving an incubated environment where you can go and say, okay, I want to take I've got an idea, I've got a business idea, and I want to apply a proof of concept to that business idea and present it up to the business. To go and do that, you can go and build a little incubator environment and have that ready. But why wouldn't you want to build that in that incubator environment on something you can actually stage through its life cycle, right? Build it in an environment where you can do test and dev on it, take it through and say, okay, well, this thing's getting adopted by the business and they want us to run with it, and we can push that same ecosystem up to production. And that's what this platform allows you to do. It allows you to take the design and build, the provisioning aspects of it, not worrying to have to support about middleware. You don't have to build a middleware engine. And you don't even have to worry about the runtime. You're effectively taking the runtime out of it and saying, okay, we've got this turnkey paths that can do all that for us. So all we really have to worry about is our code, right? Let's push our code to the platform, let the platform run it itself, let it talk to the underlying infrastructure to make sure it has enough resources to support it, and let's get it up and running as quickly as possible. So this is where it gets the idea of saying, okay, you can take a business initiative and an idea and take it from something that would have been deployed in, say, months to weeks. DTO is a good example of a customer that's using Cloud Foundry. They're using it on top of Amazon. So this is the thing about Cloud Foundry. It can run on any cloud. It can run on Amazon. It also supports Openstack and other cloud platforms. So what this does for organizations is it kind of helps enable this shift in reality and shift in reality for roles, right? You've got your traditional roles where you have these storage admins and network admins and system architects, and you can allow them to say, okay, well, we've got a platform here that's enabling you to think about being a cloud architect. It allows you to be someone who works with the business on what the business is looking for. And so, and trying to figure out what the service should be that's sitting on top of the platform versus trying to figure out how to build the platform itself. And so that's the big thing we're trying to help organizations with. By no stretch of the imagination is one way better than the other. It really just depends on where you're at in your organization. So I thought I'd end there with just some links. This presentation obviously is going to be videoed. These are all the presentations that we provided to the community in Barcelona. I think it was 2 weeks ago. At the Openstack Summit over there. So every single one of these presentations were there. They're all links, and I'll share this presentation out so you can go and learn more and more about what we're doing in the space.